Greetings everyone, this is Reverend Afrin. I hope all is well. Tonight I wanted to do a video about chaos, something that I think a lot of people think about, and something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, this idea of chaos. And I think chaos is a scary word for a lot of people. They see it and they think, oh my gosh, chaos is this sort of unchecked, unbalanced disorder. And in some ways it is, but I mean there is things like controlled chaos also. And when I think about chaos, I think a lot about, you know, like watching the American news, looking at what's going on in the news, all the different things that we hear about. You know, anything can happen at any time. And I know for a lot of Westerners that's a really scary thought, because we're so used to things going our way. We're so used to having things the way we want it, you know, and we're used to our society, at least in America, giving us whatever we want, because that's just the way the American society is. And for anyone who's ever worked in public service knows that if you yell or scream loud enough, you can get what you want. But when it comes to the universe, it doesn't work that way. You can't just get what you want because you just say that's what I want. You know, no, it doesn't work that way. And so it's really interesting to me that, you know, watching the American news, watching, you know, all this stuff going on about the hurricanes that we had recently, watching all this stuff about the conflict with North Korea and all these other things. And I don't mean to be political, but I'm just saying that you know, anything can happen at any time. And the more that I get older, the more that I realize how precious and how important and how fragile order is, how fragile it is to have things go our way, how fragile it is to have things, you know, be the way that they are right now. And anything can happen at any time. Recently, my brother-in-law's father passed away. It was very unexpected. And again, I mean, unexpected, you know, anything can happen at any time. And I'm not saying that necessarily to scare anyone. It makes me think about this idea of chaos and how chaos isn't too far away. And it makes me think about a lot of these ancient mythologies, and makes me think about you know, what is the pagan view of chaos and what's the Wiccan view of chaos. And so I think about the Greek and Roman mythology, and I'm sure most of us are familiar with that. The idea that when the world was created, there was nothing but chaos. And then, of course, the Titans came around, and the Titans, you know, formed the world in such a way, but they were still very chaotic. They were raw, they were natural, they were dynamic, they were chaotic. And then, of course, the Olympian gods came, and with the help of Zeus, overthrew the Titans and imprisoned them in Tartarus. And then that led to a sort of ordering of the universe. And they're constantly at battle with these chaotic forces. And we owe our honor and our reverence to these deities for creating order for us out of chaos. The same thing, you know, can be found in Egyptian mythology, in other forms of mythology as well. You know, and I also find it interesting that in a lot of mythologies, their society was modeled after the divine society or the divine aristocracy. For instance, one of my favorites is Chinese Taoist mythology, because in Chinese Taoist mythology, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor is this emperor of heaven, the leader of all the deities. And then his court was made up of more powerful deities, and then from there you get lesser deities and things like that. But these deities were sort of appointed to these positions, and these positions were, you know, okay, well, we're going to have a deity who rules over the office of water, or over the office of the sea, or whatever it is. So we have all these different deities that rule over different things. And when Imperial China came around, they copied their idea of government from their idea of the celestial government, with the Jade Emperor at the top and his court of officers. I apologize about the shaky on the video. Anyway, so the Jade Emperor was kind of leader, and so in Imperial China you had the Emperor, and then you had his advisors and his assistants and his court and things like that. So it was modeled off of the ancestral government in a way. So you have that a lot in other mythologies as well, and I also like the idea of, in Norse mythology, very similar story to the Greek mythology. You have these deities that come along and they form the universe, and then they're overthrown, and they're battling with one another. But the interesting thing about the Norse mythology, and others as well, is that the deities that are in control have ordered the universe, but they are constantly in battle. They're constantly fighting the forces of chaos. Not necessarily evil, but the forces of disorder. And I find it interesting because maybe if you were on the chaotic side of things, you wouldn't necessarily think it was the bad side. You wouldn't necessarily think that it was the wrong side. You would just see it as being a different side. And so, having somebody come in and take over, who's really legitimate? The people who were there first, or maybe they weren't there first, but this idea of difference, of change being chaotic, as opposed to what's always been being ordered. So that's a really interesting topic, I think, too. But in Norse mythology, you find these gods constantly at war with the giants, at war with the Ents, at war with, all of this. And then, of course, Loki figures in as well, and he's always kind of stirring it up, sometimes for good, sometimes for worse, not necessarily meaning to be evil, but chaotic. So I find that really interesting. And, you find also in Egyptian mythology this idea that the gods came and created order, and you have like Ma'at, the goddess of order, things of that nature. And then, of course, you have Set or Seth that comes in, and he's always trying to cause all this disorder, and he's always on the fringes, ready to cause disorder. And I think that anyone who's ever worked in the public, in food service especially, knows how quickly things can get out of hand and how quickly things can become chaotic and disordered. And it, lately at least for me, it's definitely made me think a lot about these ancient myths and about the idea of chaos and order, and how maybe in some ways the ancients did have it right, and maybe in some ways it's important that we pay homage to these deities of order because of how close disorder can be. And in today's modern society, it seems like disorder is never too far away. Just that email, that letter in the mail, that phone call, that text message can be enough to change your life forever. So, with that being said, maybe it's not such a bad idea to honor the deities of order and think about chaos and how chaos influences your life, and how far away chaos is. Or if you can remember a time when maybe things were going great, and then all of a sudden you got that phone call, you got that text message, and it seemed like everything was completely out of order. Nothing was right ever again. But at the same time, is chaos necessarily a bad thing? Maybe chaos is simply just a transformation that leads to something else, to a new normal. And I think a lot about things that are going on in Europe, and things that are going on in the Middle East, and things when there's so much, and I find these people that are feeling like their way of life is being threatened in a way, or their way of life is being challenged in a way, and they immediately go to the edge. They immediately go to the edge of the abyss, and they immediately go to the edge of the chaos and say, if any one of these marginalized groups gets control, gets any sort of majority, then they're immediately going to cause chaos. And is that always the case? In a lot of ways, we found that's not the case. these people that want to be in control, want to hold on to that power and to that influence, when another, entity comes in, and is it really a bad thing necessarily that we have to consider a change? We have to consider a potential new normal. So, without being too political, I just want people to think about that idea of chaos and order and how it plays in your life. Until next time, signing off for now.